Welcome, everyone, to the SI Media Podcast. I am your host, Jimmy Traina. Thank you for joining me as we get through the summer, head towards football. Once we get to August, we can start to think about football. But until then, we try to deal with the slow time here in the sports calendar, but busy time here on the pod. We have John Ourand from Sports Business Journal talk about the latest sports media news, Charles Barkley and LIV Golf and whether he leaves TNT, what's going on with NFL Sunday Ticket, the streaming bonanza continues. NFL Plus is now a thing, ESPN raising their prices, so all that with John Ourand. Then we have Dave Meltzer from the Wrestling Observer following Ourand to talk about Vince McMahon leaving WWE, the controversial exit, retiring, his daughter Stephanie taking over as CEO, I believe, and then Triple H, his son-in-law, Paul Levesque, in charge of creative, and Meltzer breaks that down as well as anyone. And then Train of Thoughts with Sal Licata, where we get into some topics about the Radio Hall of Fame, the demise of Choco Taco that everyone's talking about, the Jeter doc, and what we would pay for a concert. So it's a loaded show. I'm not even going to give you the preamble about go check out past episodes. Just check them out. Subscribe to the pod. We've had some great guests. Give us a review. We will read reviews next week. If you leave it on Apple, 5-star review, and subscribe. All right. John Ourand on sports media news going around. And then we've got Dave Meltzer on the Vince McMahon retirement. And then Sal Licata with the Train of Thoughts right here on the SI Media Podcast. All right. Joining me now, SI Media Podcast regular from Sports Business Journal and the Marchand and Ourand podcast, John Ourand. John, how are you?
Doing great. Jimmy, this is how much I like you. I'm doing this. Jackson Holiday is being introduced at Camden Yards right now as we're speaking. And I'm like, I'd rather do the SI.
The Orioles are hot, podcast. So I appreciate that. I had to have someone on to talk about Charles Barkley and LIV, but I just want to give my listeners here full disclosure. We're taping this Wednesday afternoon. Charles has said or told Dan Patrick he's making a decision by Thursday night. If there's no offer by Thursday night, he's done with LIV. So hopefully this isn't too outdated for people listening over the weekend. And obviously we'll get a decision on Barkley after this comes out. But to me, the Barkley LIV thing is as big a sports media story as all the NFL broadcasters who switched roles in the offseason. How do you think it plays out? Let's just go easy and start with that.
Go easy. This is great. So as people are listening, they're going to either hear that I'm totally wrong or totally right. I don't have a good handle on this. I think the sense that I get, Jimmy, is that Barkley has seen what Tom Brady's making, and he's seen what all the Troy Aikman made and Romo and he is. Can you come up with a? Do I want to say more liked? What's a good adjective for Barkley? But he's at the top of his game as a studio analyst. I can't think of anybody in any sport who is able to just cut through the clutter in a way that he does. And I think he is liked as well. And so to me, I have a sneaking suspicion that this is just trying to get Turner back to say, hey, come on, let's, I should be making a lot more than I am. That being said, if you get an offer and that offer is huge, will he go and take it? That's he said that he will, or he's indicated that he would. But right now, and I could have egg on my face right now, my belief is that Turner is going to give him a promise of more money, and then he's going to stay with Turner and get a bit of an extension. What do you think? How do you see it?
It's funny because I almost feel like Turner's not a factor here because Charles made it clear that if LIV comes up with a certain number, he's going. Now, that could be a negotiating ploy. I've always thought of Charles as maybe he's different from any other broadcaster, and I thought maybe he'd be above playing that kind of game. I thought, he seems like the type that would just go to Turner and say, this is what I want. Having said that, I was pretty stunned. I'd like your take on this. And I know a lot of people who reached out to me were surprised when he went on Dan Patrick on Monday and said between Turner and endorsements, he's making $20 million a year. I think everyone assumed the number was going to be much higher than that for Charles.
I don't know if I was stunned. I don't think I've given that a ton of thought. I know that he does have a ton of endorsements, and he is a cornerstone. He's the cornerstone of inside the NBA. I would probably expect that to be maybe 50% higher, like 30 or so. Right. But to 20 is within the sort of low range of the ballpark for me, I would think.
Now, from the LIV perspective, I mean, I can make the argument Charles would be more important to them than any golfer they bring in, outside of maybe, Tiger. They've got a couple of names there with Mickelson and Koepka and all that, but I think people would tune in to hear Charles more than watch Lee Westwood. So from the LIV standpoint, I probably should follow the LIV thing more closely than I am, but I don't. It's not part of my world. But I would assume they have unlimited money. If they have unlimited money, why not give Charles $50 million a year?
Well, I don't know if it's unlimited money, but they certainly don't have a business plan that would work for any capitalistic franchise.
Right.
I mean, they have they're making no media revenue. They're making no sponsor revenue from what I can understand. I mean, this is a long-term play that they're trying to do here, of course. Yeah. But we just had on our pod, we just had David Hill, who ran Fox Sports, and and he also is advising LIV. And we asked him about the Charles factor, and that got him sort of talking about. And I know this is a topic on your pod all the time. Like, do announcers actually bring viewers? And he didn't necessarily talk about the announcers bringing viewers, but he did say that announcers are worth a premium because there are very few announcers that people will actually listen to. And NBC, I was talking to Molly Solomon. NBC, described LIV Golf. They say they don't really cover it on Golf Channel because it's like it feels like an exhibition to them. And then if you get like Charles Barkley on there talking over an exhibition and giving, he's fantastic on television. He's a bona fide television star. That could be a way to start to bring viewers and make viewers stay on for longer.
So there's a lot there. Because LIV currently doesn't have a television deal here in the U.S. Charles on Dan Patrick repeatedly said they will get a TV deal. The fact that David Hill was on your pod talking about helping LIV makes me think something will happen with, I think, LIV and Fox. I mean, Fox is sitting here with FS1, which has like no programming, basically. I shouldn't say no programming, but outside of Major League Baseball, I'm not sure, and they have college football, but they can use programming on FS1. NBC is not going to get in bed with LIV. CBS is not going to do it. ESPN won't do it. Fox, I think, is the one who would. And I think forget will someone tune in for the announcers. What Charles would give them is credibility as an organization, I think. And I also think
credibility as a TV show more than an organization.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also think, listen, as of right now, if you take away stories about which golfers have jumped ship and how the PGA is sort of trying to punish the golfers that have jumped ship, LIV isn't getting any coverage around their events. Charles calls the event. Every single website, every single blog is going to aggregate all the stuff he's saying. And then LIV, all of a sudden, they're getting some publicity that they're not getting right now. All the publicity they're getting right now is like what they're doing to the PGA and the future and this and that. They're not getting any coverage of their actual tournaments and events. Charles goes there, and then that's going to change.
Yeah, I agree with that somewhat. I think that there's a certain truism to all of media, and not sports media, not just sports media. And if this gets eyeballs, if people start to show an interest in the competition, And the more important shoe to drop is if advertisers start to decide that they want to take part in this and that they're willing to move over that way, you're going to see a U.S. television deal. Every single network that you mentioned, including Fox, has said no. Fox had very early talks with LIV about a time buy, but right now. Publicly, actually, I don't know if any of them are speaking publicly, but certainly privately, it's that is like a no-go area. Again, they need ratings. They're looking for ratings. If this turns into an established television property, then yeah, I could easily see that happening. I do think that this weekend coming up at the Bedminster is going to be a very interesting test case for it. Like in the shadow of what was the World Trade Center with the protesters who are very media savvy out in front. I mean, we'll see who sort of has a stomach to wade through that for this march for ad money and eyeballs.
Right. And the other thing I find interesting in this is, tell me what you think. I feel like Charles has all the power here, meaning if Charles wants to do both, meaning LIV and TNT, I don't think LIV would stop him. I don't know, man. Charles has the power.
Charles does have the power, and I think that the Turner will want to would want to keep him on regardless. People don't stay up forever, and I think that if somebody like Charles were to make a move to go to LIV, he risks damaging his reputation. He risks all of a sudden becoming like a legit villain, and then he risks becoming, not a bad risk if they're going to pay him, $60 million, but he risks becoming almost nuclear to where people won't want to associate with him, and so that's something to keep an eye on sort of what the public sentiment is over this sports washing of LIV Golf right now.
Yeah. There's a part of me that thinks LIV will offer Charles whatever he wants. And there's a part of me that thinks Charles can say to LIV and TNT, like, I want to do both. And I think they would both let him. Neither would want to let him go. I mean, TNT doesn't want to let him go, and LIV doesn't. If LIV has an opportunity to get him, is LIV going to let, I don't know, $10 million stand in the way? I would think they'd go to that. Oh,
they'd pay whatever, and they've already shown they'd pay whatever. And I already think Charles is the number one sports media star on television right now.
The amazing thing is, if he did the LIV, like, is he doing it to actually analyze golf, or are they bringing him there to be a comedian? Because, if you're a golf person, do you want an NBA guy doing the analysis of an event? I think that's a little tricky if you're trying to have some credibility.
Did you read Jason Gay's profile in the open letter?
I have it in an open tab, but I have not read it yet.
At one point, he says, Charles, I know you can't name 5 Orlando Magic players right now. So it's not. Yeah. He's a Hall of Famer. He knows more basketball than he's forgotten more basketball than either of us has ever known. Yeah. But he's hardly sort of this seam head, a basketball version of a seam head that sort of knows the game inside and out right now in terms of the players that are there. I mean, he understands competition. He understands, how to give opinions that again, break through the clutter. And, he doesn't need to know about like whether it's a 5-iron or a 7-iron that goes in, or the way the wind is blowing.
Tell me what you think happens. Give me a prediction so then we can make fun of you if you're wrong. I'll make one too. All right, good. I said I think that Turner is going to say, don't do it. Don't risk your reputation. We'll pony up, and you have the number one voice on TV right now. Like, let's just continue that moving forward. I was convinced he was going to LIV. I was totally convinced. But then hearing him with Dan Patrick, I think he wants to stay with Turner. So
Jimmy, you're from New York. You live in New York. Does LIV and the Saudi involvement, does that bug you?
Does it bug me? I mean, listen, a lot of things bug me. You know, it's one of those things you don't want to say it doesn't bug you because you don't want to come off as being disrespectful to the victims of 9/11. Whether it bugs me or not, this golf organization, they're here. And they've poached a ton of golfers already. It's not going anywhere. They'll get a TV deal. So does it bug me? You know, there's a lot of things that bug me in sports. I for me personally, you know, I'm not a huge golf fan, so maybe that's part of why I'm not as worked up as other people. You know, you hear the families of the victims of 9/11 have come out, and you hear that, and obviously it's like, how could you not feel bad for them? But it's not like they wouldn't play somewhere else. I get if you don't want them here in New York, but it's not like the tournament's going to get shut down. They're going to keep going. So you know how it is in this business. If there's money involved, people are going to take the money.
Yeah, and let me be clear too about a TV deal. When they do a TV deal, and I do think they will end up doing a TV deal, it's likely going to be a time buy. There's going to be little, if any, rights fee that's associated with this, at least at first, as they start to ramp up a little bit. And I would imagine that they have a streaming service like DAZN sitting there willing to take it right now. I think that there's a bigger, fish to fry. They want to be on linear television, right, in the United States, and that's sort of what they're holding out for there.
One thing I want to say, and I said this on Twitter the other day, if you listen to Barkley on Dan Patrick, it showed you what a tremendous interviewer Dan Patrick is. I mean, he just kept asking every single question that you wanted to ask, and he did it straightforward. Now, it helps when you have Barkley, who will basically answer everything. But you don't hear interviews like that often where the interviewer asks how much you make, how much you're willing, how much you need to leave, and the interviewee answering. So from the interview perspective of it, I thought it was fascinating.
I find Dan Patrick to be the best interviewer in the business. I mean, he asks all the right questions. He just appears to be naturally curious about the person that he's interviewing, which always helps. And the key thing to me is he actually listens. He listens to what the person says and he follows up, which is sometimes tough to do when you're on live radio or live television. Yep.
Let's shift to NFL. Sunday Ticket. Everything you read says Apple's going to get it. Now, I think you reported that Google made a bid. Well, let me start with that. What is the NFL waiting for exactly? Because I know they said I think Goodell said in the fall there'll be a decision. I mean, maybe they're on summer vacation and that's why they're not dealing with it now. But what if they have a bid from Apple? They have the bid from Google. I'm sure Amazon. What are they waiting for? What's taking so long to get the decision going?
This isn't going to be a strict Sunday Ticket rights deal. There's a lot of they're trying to throw in or add in. Throw in makes it sound bad, but they're also for sale is a major stake in NFL media, which is NFL.com, NFL Network, NFL Red Zone. I'm not entirely certain if that new streaming service NFL Plus is part of it, but I think it is. And so that all of a sudden becomes a much more complicated deal to come up with, and then the way that Apple and all my sourcing has Apple as sort of the front runner now. That can change. Like I always say, like all it takes is Bezos to wake up and say, no, I want it, and they'll cut a bigger check and get it. But right now it looks like it's going to be Apple. And if you take a look at the way they did the MLS deal, that was another one that just took a long time. And that's sort of the way that Apple does business. Apple feels like it has a lot of leverage in these discussions. And they're just kind of like, leaving no stone unturned. So part of that is the way that Apple does business. Part of it is the fact that it's not going to be a clean and easy. We just want to pay, $2 billion for DirecTV. And that's the other part of this too. Once this comes out, the money is going to be really big, but it's not just going to be for Sunday Ticket. It's going to be very hard to determine the value of Sunday Ticket because, it's been well reported, what DirecTV pays. And, it's been losing a ton of money over the past. It was tried to get out of it a couple of years ago because it can't make money off of it. So
I was shocked because I read this week, I think DirecTV only had 1.5 million subscribers for Sunday Ticket, and it was down from 2 million. I'm surprised more people don't have Sunday Ticket across the country that's completely addicted to.
Well, you know what? There are a couple of things that have been killers for Sunday Ticket. One is they now have national games in over in all over England and international. Thursday night has a really good schedule. Sunday afternoon, Sunday night, Monday night, and so all of a sudden, what you're getting for Sunday Ticket. I mean, if you're a Cowboys fan who lives in New York, how many Cowboys games are you going to buy Sunday Ticket for those two or three Cowboys games that you're not going to see regularly?
It's when I got rid of DirecTV a few years ago, I would always break it down this way: where you really need Sunday Ticket is for Sunday at 1. That's where Sunday Ticket is valuable, especially here in New York, where we have two teams that are completely and totally unwatchable every week. It's because the best game at 4:25 is always a national game. And there'd always be like maybe one, there's only 3 or 4 games at 4:00, so you could, use some illegal streams and all that stuff. Sunday at 1 is where you really need Sunday Ticket, especially if you're in a market like in New York where you can't watch the teams because they're pathetic. So you're right. There's so many games nationally now, and everything is so spread out.
But then if you add on top of it, Sunday at 1, how content are you with NFL Red Zone?
Not content at all. I like to watch the game.
You like the whole games?
I like the game mix. I like to do the 4 or the 6 and watch everything. So,
well, if you talk to people at DirecTV, they point to the launch of NFL Red Zone and they just say like that enabled people to unsubscribe and still feel like they got a Sunday Ticket light experience.
Right. It is. I mean, when you think about it, it's kind of amazing that they were able to give Red Zone to cable services. I mean, that DirecTV could not have been happy when that happened, like you just said.
Yeah. I still have yet to see a media company say no or play hardball with the NFL and win. It hasn't happened in my career.
Last thing on this, and we've discussed this before when you've been on, and I still get tweets about this all the time when it comes out that Sunday Ticket will probably go to Apple. People want to know about the bars, and because obviously that's an enormous thing where people go to bars to watch the games. You've said in the past that there'll still be some sort of DirecTV deal. Do you know if that's still true? Or
that is the most likely scenario. There is potential that Apple will say no, and it'll just kind of, or whoever will say no and move forward on their own and just make all the bars get wired up. But I've heard these big national chains like Buffalo Wild Wings, they don't have smart TVs up there. They depend on DirecTV. So I would be nothing's happened yet because they haven't done a Sunday Ticket deal, and once. Let's just say it's Apple. Once Apple does the deal, then DirecTV has to deal with Apple. They're not dealing with the NFL anymore. Okay. And so once they do that, like once that first deal gets done, I would be shocked if DirecTV doesn't have another part of that because that's a big part of DirecTV's business.
There's a theory out there, and I've had major issues with DirecTV. I canceled DirecTV, but I don't want to see people lose their jobs. I don't want to see things going out of business, but DirecTV, like they survive losing Sunday Ticket, they'll be fine.
Yeah, they were losing money off Sunday Ticket. It depends on how many people end up leaving DirecTV because they don't have Sunday Ticket anymore. And they started giving Sunday Ticket away, toward the end. I think I think it'll be fine. I think that you can take a look at Dish Network, at the other consumer satellite service. They're able to be to make a profit, and they've shed all the RSNs, so they're spending less on programming, but they're still able to get people to buy like lower cost relatively lower cost programming tiers.
You mentioned in this discussion NFL Plus, which launched another service where they want fans to pay. And
the NFL, they know how to reach into your pocket.
And also ESPN Plus just raised their price by $3 a month. And we've been in agreement on this, but it's just fascinating to me that there are sports fans out there who still think this is a good thing.
I know. By the way, we were early adopters in this of like, we had a bundle.
And I just want to be clear, because this is where this issue, where some people try to battle me on it. My point about this is a horrible time is if you like every sport, if you like NFL, MLB, NBA, NHL, soccer, golf, if you're one of those crazy sports fans, this is horrific because you are paying so much money if you want to consume everything. And it's going to get worse and worse and worse. It's crazy.
I think the NHL did a really smart deal where, if you want to see every NHL game, you subscribe to the Disney Plus bundle and you get it. It's a one-stop shop for that. Right. MLS, I think part of its deal was really smart. Like if you're a really deep, passionate MLS fan, you subscribe to Apple and it's a pretty easy fix. But like you said, what if you're an NHL fan and an MLS fan? And an NFL fan now, and you throw in Major League Baseball and
golf, because I know they put the golf on Peacock on the last major. People were pissed off about that.
Yeah, we have soccer is out there. I mean, I have seen baseball get bashed this spring because you have to do Peacock, you have to do Apple TV Plus. You have to have a cable subscription for the RSNs.
Amazon here in New York, if you want to watch the Yankees, they're on Amazon Prime every Friday night here in New York.
On top of it, and part of me feels bad for baseball because they're such a lightning rod because they're just doing what every other sport is doing.
The issue with baseball is baseball won't just say we need the money.
Exactly.
They lost a lot of money in their ESPN deal when ESPN got rid of the midweek games, and ESPN just does Sunday night now. So ESPN's paying MLB a lot less, so they did the Peacock and Apple deals to make up the cash. Just say that, but they won't say that. They say stupid things, and then they get bashed. I will say this. This is my issue with this, and this is, just to be clear. The issue is that if you put games exclusively, and this is what this is exclusive. So you have exclusive games on Apple, exclusive games on Peacock, here in New York with the Yankees, exclusive games on Amazon Prime. My cable will though do $200 a month because
cable
I'm paying for the Yes Network.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
That's the issue, and it's very simple to me. Like, I don't have a problem with MLB making a deal with Apple TV. Just don't make the games exclusive in the local market. The local game should be on your local cable station if the local cable company is still charging you full price. That's it.
Yeah, you know what I'm frustrated about with those deals is that these were packages that all of the linear TV networks said no to. Nobody wanted these packages because when ESPN did have them, they were on the RSNs. They were not exclusive to ESPN. And so now all of a sudden these packages that historically have had very little viewership have gone on to Apple TV Plus, and they will not MLB, Apple TV Plus. They will not say how many people are watching it. So we have no idea, and there's no guidance at all on whether this is a good deal and people, and they are actually attracting a lot younger fans, and they are attracting more fans. If it's a so-so deal or if it's a bad deal, it's the only thing I did. I asked an MLB executive. He said, "Oh, the numbers are great."
Sure. Then why aren't they out there?
Exactly. Yeah. So are my podcast numbers. Those are great too. Yeah.
I mean, listen, that was going to be my next question to you, is because we went back and forth on Twitter about this the other day, where Peacock and Apple won't release the numbers. How great could the numbers possibly be, first of all, when the Apple package is a Friday night package and the Peacock is a Sunday morning at 11:30? I mean, you're hurting yourself, I think, right there. And then, again, baseball is so localized. It's so localized. How many people in Los Angeles are going to go to Apple TV to watch Royals against Tigers? I mean, it's just such a weird deal.
I will say this, Apple so far has done a pretty good job, I think, in terms of on a Friday night, if you open up the Apple TV app, it's right there. It's impossible to miss. And so if you have any interest in it, I think that you are going to be clicking on that and seeing it. Yeah.
And I have no critiques of the telecast. My critique is that it's exclusive. That's my only critique.
And I also think that there are 162 games. If there are, well, poor you like the Yankees. So there are more of those games that you're going to lose than me with the Orioles, I guess.
Right.
If I can't see 2 Oriole games because they happen to be on, Apple TV or Peacock, then, it's 2. What percentage is 2 out of 160?
Right. Well, the couple of times the Yankees have been on Apple and Peacock, I just haven't watched the games. I mean, if it's the NFL on Thursday night, you're going to watch the game on Amazon. That's not going to be a problem. Baseball, 162 games, like you said, every day. You could blow off a couple of games, and it's not really a big deal. I think Amazon and the NFL will be fine because it's the NFL.
I don't know, man. That Thursday night football is, I think that they ended up getting a pretty good package for Thursday night, better than I was expecting it to be. But I love any of your tweets and any of your columns that reference your dad. And I just think about guys like your dad that are trying to it's on Amazon Prime. I don't know what Amazon Prime is.
I mean, what's sad about it is they don't care about people who are 60, 70 years old. And, that's sort of, that's the way it is everywhere. We've been taping for 30 minutes. Has Amazon hired any more people to work in their studio?
This is the biggest PR staff.
Oh, my God. Every day there's another hire. I've never seen anything like it. It's good for jobs.
It's big for them. It's big. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, the pregame show basically is to start at 2 p.m. in order to, although, the NFL Network started, when the NFL Network was doing Thursday night football, they were starting their pregame show at 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I think. So
I will say this about Amazon. They came from zero, and I think that their booth is look, I know you love Al Michaels. He's the GOAT. He's the greatest ever do the NFL play-by-play. I think Herb Street is the best college analyst out there right now. I think that the idea, I'm totally curious to see if that's going to translate to the NFL. And I expect that it will. And then, they have been making a ton of hires, but the hires they're making are these young. It's a different kind of hire. You're not going to be sitting there with, Jimmy Johnson, who hasn't coached anybody that's currently playing, or Howie Long, who hasn't played with anybody that's currently playing. These are guys almost like Tony Romo, his first year, that are going to be when I was on the field at that moment with that person, and it could blow up. It could be awful, but I think it's a unique strategy.
Yeah, definitely. And I think Herb Street will be great with Al Michaels on Thursday Night Football. The 2 or 3 NFL games Herb Street did for ESPN, I thought he was tremendous. So I think that's going to be a great booth. The pregame show with the 800 people. I don't know. On Sunday mornings, if you flip on NFL Network, you think, wow, there's a lot of people, and that set is massive. Amazon's going to blow it away. So it'll be interesting to see how they fit them all in. But they can, it's Amazon. They could start their pregame show anytime they want. I mean, it's not like they have any other that's the beauty of the streaming. They could do whatever they want with that.
Yeah, they're going to do the alternate telecast too, and I don't know how many they're going to do out of that, but they've always had 3 or 4 going. So they're keeping a lot of NFLers employed. Let's put it that way.
And that's good. That's good. Anything on college football with the Big Ten? I guess that's going to come down soon, right?
Yeah, I'm told at some point in August. It should come down before Labor Day. Fox is certain to keep it.
Yeah.
If I'm going to handicap, I still think CBS has to have something. They're losing the SEC on Saturday afternoon. That's a big hole. I would expect CBS to be extremely aggressive in terms of keeping it. And then the wild card is whether or not ESPN has come back and how much Amazon is going to be there, and whether the conference and the university presidents are going to be okay with taking a couple of games and putting them on a streaming service like Amazon, which is you want to talk old school. College athletics is very old school. That would be a really tough thing to.
How would that? So they would have exclusive games, exclusive Big Ten games on Amazon only. Is that what they would do with a couple?
Yeah, almost certainly. But then again, I think one of the things, if they do a deal with ESPN, there would be exclusive games on ESPN Plus, I'm sure, too.
Which they've started to do a very little bit, I think. And see, that's where ESPN, I mentioned the $3 increase for ESPN Plus earlier. I mean, if you're a sports fan, the $9.99, the $10 for ESPN Plus is a good deal, just because there's so much stuff on there. I know as a degenerate gambler, I have ESPN Plus going from noon to midnight on Saturdays with all the games that they have on there. So,
Jimmy, I don't always bite in for a network spin, but I thought their spin was actually pretty good. If you take a look at what PGA Tour Live was, which is now part of ESPN Plus, it cost more last year. The NHL, out of market package, right. That's all part of ESPN Plus. Look at how much you're paying for Netflix and for other similar things.
Yep.
If you put them next to each other, it does make a lot of sense. What I found to be particularly interesting about that, though, is that they didn't raise the price of the bundle for Disney Plus or Hulu as well. So they're really trying to build up the bundle.
Yeah, I have the bundle, so I was excited to see that when at first I saw they were raising their prices. But listen, from a content standpoint, you get bang for your buck with ESPN Plus. And I'm not just saying that.
Let me ask you a quick question.
Yeah.
Just because I'm curious, and I think I know the answer to this. What's your favorite, not sports related, just all in all, what's your favorite streaming service?
Probably. Now, you're talking about content or ease of use?
Everything is involved.
I mean, the one like I said, the ESPN Plus is very, very important to me because of college football on Saturdays. I use ESPN Plus every Saturday from noon to midnight. That's not a lie. And I never have a problem with the service. There's no buffering and all that bullshit. It's very good. The one I like using the best is HBO Max.
I thought that was going to be the first thing you said. I find I'm on HBO Max all the time.
Yeah. Peacock, I think, is not great at all. Netflix is fine, I guess. Prime is fine. Hulu's okay. I like HBO Max the best out of all. And I think Apple TV is good too.
Apple TV is surprisingly good. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. That's basically. But again,
all right. So if you're ranking them, ESPN Plus, HBO Max.
Yeah, and I guess Apple.
And Apple. Yeah, I have HBO Max and Apple up there. Yeah.
I don't watch Netflix as much as it seems everyone else does. I rarely watch Prime. I use Hulu more than Netflix and Prime, probably. I've been watching The Bear on Hulu. I recommend it.
I've heard good things about that one.
It's very good. Very good. I have not signed up, though, for NFL Plus. And I don't think I will be.
Well, why would you? You get everything anyway, right?
I know. It's weird. I don't know. I guess that's really for the people who want to go rewatch the games during the week, right? And get this camera version
too and everything out there.
Yeah. I'm not breaking down film. That's fine. That's one I don't need. I wish there were a couple I could get rid of. That's what I wish, but it doesn't seem that's the case.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if it's inertia or you're just worried something else is going to come up, and so you just kind of keep it.
Just you always hear about this show is on this streaming, then this one's on. You got to check this out. In terms of sports, I think you just need ESPN Plus. I'm trying to think. Well, you'll need Amazon obviously for Thursday Night Football.
You'll need Apple at some point. I mean, they're making some moves over there. Yeah.
Yeah. Sunday Ticket, if it's on Apple, then yeah, for sure. If they didn't get Sunday Ticket, I'm not sure I would need Apple. And then,
No, I mean they had one baseball game and a week and MLS, which I don't think you're a big fan of anyway.
I'm not watching the MLS.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but I'll stick with college football. The college football. I use CBS a little bit for that too because they have the CBS Sports Network. There's games there, but yeah, it's mainly the ESPN Plus. And I'm not just saying that because of the Jeter doc, which is tremendous that people can watch on ESPN Plus.
I would like to see the ratings of the Jeter doc in your house. I mean,
I was lucky. I got screeners, so I didn't watch the first episode when it was on because it was on late after the All-Star game, which I didn't watch. So, but I watched the second episode when it was on live. It was, if you're a Yankee fan, it's a must-watch. If you're not a Yankee fan, I'm sure you won't enjoy it.
Yeah, Yankeeography, absolutely.
I'll take it. All right, John, I appreciate it, and we'll see how our Barkley predictions play out. By the time most people listen to this, there'll probably be a decision, so people can either mock us or say we did a good job recapping it.
Hey, man, always happy to come on. I appreciate still getting the invite, so that's great. Thanks.
Thank you. Be well. All right, joining me now, the top wrestling reporter, journalist, whatever you want to use forever, from the Wrestling Observer newsletter, Dave Meltzer. Dave, how are you?
Thanks. This is definitely a week where I realize how long this has been. It's a really weird week for me because, my career doing the Wrestling Observer coincides completely with Vince McMahon's career owning the company since we both started at almost the exact same. I had written when I was younger and other stuff since I was 11 years old, but the Wrestling Observer and Vince McMahon buying WWE started at roughly the same time. And here it is 40 years later, and it's the end of the era.
Before we get into the Vince retirement and the future of WWE, where does this past week stack up for you in terms of the craziest weeks you've had covering WWE pro wrestling?
I mean, it's up there. The craziest weeks for sure that I will say would be 2007 with the Chris Benoit when he killed his wife and his son and himself. That was number one, and nothing will ever top that as far as being a crazy week. And then the 1997 Survivor Series with Bret Hart was an insane week, and to some people in wrestling, it was like the biggest story. I can't put that ahead of like a Chris Benoit, that situation, because that was a national news story. And Owen Hart's death in 1999 was pretty big. The death of WCW was a giant story, but it wasn't. We knew it was coming. I mean, that was pretty big too. I mean, in hindsight. So those would be the biggest ones, and this would be right there with them. Right.
Before we get into the Vince saga, just curious. So you said you've been doing this for 40 years, and your career coincides with Vince running WWE. Did you have a relationship with Vince? What was it like? It
was on and off. I mean, there were times, where we talked a decent amount, and then I don't think that we have talked in many, many years. The last time, I saw him would have been when he was in San Jose a couple of years ago, and we talked briefly. But it was, in recent years, it's been through PR people and things like that. I mean, personally, there was a period where, he would call me fairly often and we would have very interesting discussions. But I think after 2002, it was almost all through PR people.
So when the news broke, he sent out a tweet Friday that he was retiring. How shocked were you?
Yeah, I mean, I was shocked in one sense just because of the finality of it. But, you could see the thing building up. I mean, when I saw the Wall Street Journal second article, my immediate reaction reading it is that he's got to go. And he was then, after that, he had told the talent that he's not going no matter what, at the Vegas show, July 2nd. And so I thought there might be a big fight. And then he kind of went quietly. And I guess investigations must have turned up things that they felt that he had to leave. And I could see it, when the second story came, I really could see that there was a real good chance that it would happen. But the second story didn't get as much media pub as the first. So then I started thinking like, well, maybe, he'll just stay head of creative for a while. But I mean, the moment of the thing was a shocker, but the fact that it happened, not really.
So do you think he retired more because he didn't want more scandals coming out of the woodwork, or do you think he retired because of this specific story where he paid off, I think it was 4 women over 15 years, $14.6 million. And then there were some issues, I guess, with the board and whether it was a personal expense, business expense or something. I apologize. I don't know enough about the business world to know what that whole deal was. But specifically about him retiring, what do you think it was that made him say, okay, I got to go, or someone telling him he's got to go?
I think the feeling is that with the investigations against him, by the SEC and maybe a federal probe, that he had to go. I don't think it was, I think that it was well known. I never heard of any pressure from like NBC or Fox. They have a morals clause in the contract where they could have, used this to pressure him to go if they wanted to. But I didn't hear that they did that when it first happened, before we had heard about the federal probe and the SEC investigation. The talk in the company and my speculation was that, okay, it's either, one of the sponsors or TV stations or something invoked that clause and pressured him out, or there was something that, from a media standpoint that they got wind of that was coming, another story. And maybe that was just like, okay, they're going to just keep coming with new stuff and it's just best that I leave. But I think that it was just that, the fact that he was being investigated and that it was getting to be real controversial for the company, and they have to redo some books for the last couple of years regarding profits, losses, and expenses, and they didn't do their accounting right because of perhaps stuff he either withheld or whatever. And I think he just had to go.
It's still amazing. Like, you say he had to go, and it's still amazing to me that he went. You've always thought of it. It's his company. He's pro wrestling. He has said,
anonymous.
While he has not done a million interviews over the years, he's always, everyone thought he's doing that job till he passes. Like, there was retirement was never a word you ever thought that would ever be associated with Vince McMahon. This obviously isn't really a retirement, but I'm surprised. No matter how much pressure there was forcing him out, I'm still surprised he went.
The one thing I always thought with Vince was the only way he would go was to save his company. And he was the person who would save his company first. And I think that is maybe part of it. Plus, right. Again, he wants to save it for, his daughter, his son-in-law, and just his legacy. I think that he wants this WWE to go forever, because as long as WWE is around, Vince McMahon was not the creator of WWE, but he was the creator of this version of WWE. Right. And he was the creator of this version of the pro wrestling business. And I don't think he wants that lifetime of work to go away, especially when you're older and you kind of like realize that, your life is your legacy, right. And how you're remembered. And he's going to be remembered in a lot of different ways. There's a lot good and a lot bad when it comes to Vince. I mean, any story that's only good or only bad is missing a huge part of the story.
Yeah. I want to get into what's going to happen going forward, but when the news first broke, of course, everyone's first take is this real? Is this not real? I think everyone now knows it's real, but there is a question here about, can he come back in 6 months? Is it let the pressure die down, let the media stories die down and come back? Or do you think this is it?
I think I mean, my gut says this is it, but I think that the deal is that when these investigations are over, if they clear him, I think that he would try to come back if when the investigations are over. Right. That's my thought on the subject. If he's somehow cleared of all wrongdoing, I don't know how, but if that's the case, then I think he would come back.
Right. Now, this is a bizarre question that would only work here in the wrestling world, but could he come back this week as an on-air character?
I don't think that's happening. But
I know it's not. I know it's not happening. But I'm saying that's not something that is not allowed to happen.
He's got to be divested from the company for now. I think that's pretty clear. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And as long as these investigations are ongoing, he's out. John Laurinaitis is out, right. And yeah.
So what makes this crazy too, another layer in all this is, Stephanie had just taken a leave of absence.
Right.
Triple H had health problems, so he was away from the company. Now they're both back with Nick Khan in the mix as well. Give me, in terms of the WWE superstars, are they happy that it's Triple H running creative and Stephanie in charge of the company with Nick Khan?
I think so. He definitely has a lot of allies there. For the position he was in NXT, a lot of the older wrestlers, might have had issues with Paul Levesque, Triple H. But most of the younger wrestlers really like him from a management standpoint. A lot of them came up through NXT, and he was, very well liked from there. And you always have your the people you butt heads with, especially in the wrestling business. But yeah, I think that it is, the shock and everything. I know some people are kind of like, well, we'll see how it goes. Kind of skeptical or wait and see. But most that I've heard from are positive. I think that they think that it was time for a fresh approach and a different view of the creative. And they think that Paul, I think the wrestling that a lot of the wrestlers like is similar to what Paul likes, whereas the wrestling that a lot of the wrestlers grew up on and their favorite stuff inside, Vince was more into other aspects that sometimes they weren't as happy with, but you do it because your boss tells you to do it.
Right. I mean, and another layer again in all of this. So Triple H, Paul Levesque takes over. Now, Vince is his father-in-law. So, does Vince, can you envision Vince saying to, Triple H over like a Sunday dinner, you shouldn't do this with Brock Lesnar, or you make sure Roman keeps the title for 200 more days. I mean, as someone who's followed wrestling, it's impossible for me to think that doesn't happen.
It's impossible. Well, I think that, and also Stephanie in her position, he's going to be giving her advice. You would think,
right? Right.
I think the influence, he's gone, but I don't think that the influence is not there because, as you said, like there's going to be times where he speaks to his daughter and just goes, hey, do this. And she'll listen because Vince has, 40 years experience in the chair and ran the company. And, if he were, if he was your father-in-law and he gave you suggestions, you may not take every suggestion, but you will absolutely listen to everyone. Yeah.
Right. Now the fans, WWE fans, I think a lot of them think like, okay, we're going to see changes and right away and all these things they want done differently. And there's all this stuff with Kevin Dunn. And I would assume it's going to be a gradual change here. I would assume what we see, what made this, let me backtrack. What made the Vince retirement even more shocking, if you want, they had a Monday Night Raw this week at Madison Square Garden, which everyone knows is a special deal to Vince and always has been for WWE. And then they have their second biggest pay-per-view on Saturday in SummerSlam. So, that can tell you sort of the fact that, Vince had to go if it was done at this time. But I would imagine the plans for SummerSlam, for example, they can't be drastically different.
No.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, the Raw show was pretty much laid out before Vince left. They do that work, Wednesday, Thursday. He left on Friday. So most of that, I heard there were a few minor changes, but, it was essentially that show now going forward, all this work this week, that's going to be, on Paul. And I think SummerSlam, as far as, finishes and stuff, I think he'll probably have a little bit of, not a lot of influence on. And then, as far as going forward, I think that, we will see, gradual changes and perhaps new characters being mixed in and it'll be very fascinating to watch. I think there's a lot of curiosity right now.
Right. And in terms of the TV production, it's fans, I think, feel frustrated that every promo is so heavily scripted. Do you think something like that changes with Vince gone and Paul Levesque in?
Well, Stephanie was the one who pretty much, introduced scripted promos and a large writing team. They have a large writing team.
Right.
So, there might be some people who they have confidence in, and there's always been people like Kevin Owens, who's a great talker, where they'll go like, you hit your time cue and I mean, it's scripted word for word, but some of the talent has influence on the scripting and works with the writers on the scripting. A lot of, the top talent does.
Right.
So I don't expect that aspect to be different, but maybe the aspect of what is scripted, because there was a lot of scripting that they did we used to always get frustrated because they would talk in a manner and use verbiage that real people would never use in that situation, right, because Vince liked certain terms and everything. And Stephanie's a big buzzword person, I mean, she's always talking buzzwords. So I think some of that will still exist, but I'm hoping that the talking will become more conversational and more realistic. But as far as the end of scripting, I don't expect that.
That was one of my questions I wanted to ask you. Vince is famous for all these sort of restrictions on the words. Like you shouldn't say belt, I believe. You're not allowed to say
belt is a word he didn't like. Wrestling, he didn't really like.
Right. They had to be superstars, not wrestlers.
Yeah.
There were a few others in there. The belt one, I know. You think that changes at all?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no reason for it. Those were just like, we would call them Vince-isms.
Right.
And I don't think there's any need to keep the Vince-isms. Yeah.
Were you surprised at all on Monday night that right out of the gate there was sort of two Vince jokes? Paul Heyman, the brilliant and hysterically wild and talented Paul Heyman, his mic was not working. And he said to the sound guy, "You must be from New Jersey." And then he said, "We're going to write you up. You may be the next one out of here." And then, of course, there was Roman with Theory saying, "Your daddy's not here anymore." Were you at all surprised they went there right away on Monday night?
With Heyman, it's just like he's really quick on the draw, and that was what he came up with Roman. What's funny is because I totally misinterpreted that line. I was like the only one because in storyline, Theory's father had been like Johnny Gargano, but they were referring to Vince, and I thought, why did they refer to Johnny Gargano? So I totally like it. I don't. It kind of almost like that was hilarious, But surprised? No. They're looking to be a little edgy. So yeah.
No. Another thing in all this that I'm sure if people listening who are into wrestling, who are into WWE, where is Shane McMahon? Where does he fit into this at all, or is he just completely done and this has no impact on him?
You can never say anything about the future. Right now there's nothing. He's not in the company. He was fired by Vince in January, right? And but you never say never, and he's still the brother-in-law of Paul Levesque, and obviously the brother of Stephanie, and he's got a long history. The idea of bringing him back in some television form at some point, I could see it. Management, I mean, you never say never, but it's he's been out of management for so many years. So, but yeah, I wouldn't say like, 100% he'll never come back. I actually expect at some point someday he will.
So I'm going to go off the highway here and pause all this just to follow up on something because I find it fascinating where you said Vince fired Shane. Now, if I remember correctly, the story was that Shane was in charge of the Royal Rumble, and I guess it was a disaster, and Vince fired Shane. Is that an accurate synopsis, or is there more to it than that?
I mean, it was the Royal Rumble. He was in charge, and then there were problems between him and I think it was Brock Lesnar about some of the scripting of the Rumble, and Brock pretty much gets whatever he wants. And there was a feeling that he was booking the Royal Rumble all around himself too much as opposed to other people. I know that there was a spot where, Matt Riddle, who's like one of their upcoming big stars, they were having like a slugfest and he was going to get the best of Riddle, who actually fought in UFC and is, 16 years younger and all that. And I think that and that actually happened in the match. And it's kind of like, that one got through where it's kind of like, and there were other things and he got fired after that. And the Rumble wasn't a great Rumble.
And now I don't know if you know this. If you don't know this, just tell me. I don't want to ask you to opine on things, but Vince firing his son, is that a difficult decision for Vince, or is it Vince McMahon and he doesn't care about firing? I mean, it just sounds wild to me that he fired his son.
Yeah, I mean, it's wild to me too. But Shane's come and gone many, many times. But
right.
I mean, as far as like how Vince views it or anything like that, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know Vince well enough to know if how hard it was. I'm sure it's not easy, but like I said, Vince will do whatever he thinks is right for the company, and that includes firing his son or, removing his son-in-law from certain duties or whatever he thinks at that moment, whether right or wrong, is the best thing for the company. He will make that move. Yes.
Now, what's interesting about that is a big thing, it seems like online, internet, Reddit with the WWE fans is Kevin Dunn, who does the TV. The fans seem to want him out. Vince is always, you would think too, listen, no matter what the job is, take out wrestling, no matter what any job is, you would think you would change things up every now and again just for a different perspective. But Kevin Dunn's been there doing the same thing forever. Would his days be numbered now that Vince is out?
Put it this way. A couple of years ago, before a lot of controversy happened and Paul had the health issue and everything like that, it was kind of like Stephanie and Paul will run the company, whenever Vince has health issues or dies or whatever. And at that point, everyone figured that Kevin Dunn would be replaced. Vince will never replace him. So that was always what people figured. Will that happen exactly as everyone said? I mean, time will tell. Right. But, again, with the people who I've talked to in the company about it, I mean, their assumption is that Kevin will be around for a little while. And at some point he will probably retire, and then they will bring their, he was assembling his own crew in NXT to be his crew. It's going to be his guys, and Kevin's not his guy.
Triple H's guys, right?
Right. So I think he'll be out at some point, but it could be. I don't think it's going to be right away either.
Right. Now, I think the first time I heard this story was on the Conrad Thompson, Bruce Pritchard, Something to Wrestle With podcast, where Kevin Dunn or someone like saved tapes that were burning or something, and that's why Vince is loyal to Kevin Dunn. Is that true?
I just remember that Vince was so loyal to. I think that Kevin's father was a big, worked with Vince Sr., and that the families have just been close forever. But Vince, Vince's father had certain guys that Vince had to always take care of. Whether it was Freddie Blassie or Albano or James Dudley or people like that, Moolah probably, but and that I don't know what Vince may have given them a list too, but right. Kevin Dunn's father, I believe, was one of those guys on that list, and Kevin Dunn and Vince have always been very, very close. So nothing was going to happen to Kevin Dunn as long as Vince was in charge, but he's not anymore.
If no one's ever heard the Jim Cornette episode of Something to Wrestle With, where Bruce Pritchard tells the Jim Cornette story of getting in a fight with Kevin Dunn, and you're a wrestling fan, listen to it as soon as you're done listening.
I've had Jim Cornette tell me that story many times.
Yeah, it's one of the funniest things ever. I'm just gonna go some rapid fire here, get quick answers because there's so much with all of this in terms of fallout. This is a weird one, but it fascinates me as someone who covers media. Bill Simmons and I believe it was Netflix were working on a big Vince documentary. Do you know how this impacts that at all?
I was told a couple of weeks ago that that's done, that it's not happening. This was right after the first Wall Street Journal story broke. The Netflix knew that they couldn't do that documentary. I mean, a lot of people were working on a lot of things regarding Vince. Vince McMahon books and. Right. A lot of people we're working on Vince McMahon histories, and they all have to be changed now. Whatever, because I think that all of those were going to be positive, and a lot of them were going to be puff pieces. There's also the TV series of, Vince fighting the government that was going to be worked on, and I mean the whole perspective of that. That was a weird perspective anyway, because I thought Vince bringing that stuff up, the reality of that situation, even though Vince got acquitted in the trial, was very negative to the actual story was very negative. So why bring that up? But Vince, hated the prosecutors and probably hated Phil Mushnick, but rationally, the prosecutors didn't have the greatest case, but Phil Mushnick, as far as his reporting went, most of what he reported, was accurate. And, holding a grudge against a reporter for being accurate. I mean, a lot of people do that, but I thought like trying to do a whole TV series on that was really weird.
I bet it would have been good.
Yeah.
It would have been entertaining. It would have been entertaining. So do you think the Netflix doc, you said they're not doing it? It's done, but they're not going to go forward with it?
No. I heard that shuttered. Yeah.
Really? Okay. In terms of the older sort of legends who appear once in a while, Austin, Rock, Undertaker, are relationships with them in jeopardy at all because Vince is gone? Did Vince deal with them directly? We saw Austin at WrestleMania last year. Or they're all pretty tight with Paul Levesque, Triple H, where that probably won't be an issue?
I don't think any of that changes. I mean, with like Dwayne, he's got his own business endeavors, and whatever he wants to do with wrestling, he will do. I mean, it's a wild story. But like I look at it, and knowing Dwayne a little bit and everything, the idea of Dwayne ending up as like a presiding officer in this company someday is not out of the realm of possibility, because number one, he's very close with Nick Khan, and the other one is that he loves wrestling. I mean, look, his daughter is in wrestling, and he's worth how much money? And if you don't want your daughter in wrestling, you can do a million things with her. So and obviously his father and his grandfather were in wrestling, and the idea of him, like if this company goes for sale, which people think, the idea of him putting together a consortium. I mean, obviously he by himself could not buy it, but heading a consortium to buy it, that wouldn't surprise me at all. And then him being, kind of an overseer, right. And he knows the wrestling business really, really well. He's very sharp with the wrestling business and the business from the movies. So
are we going to see him versus Roman Reigns at WrestleMania?
That's up to him. I mean, I think that was certainly the idea that everyone had for the thing, but it was always up to his schedule.
Right. Roman, I had Roman on this podcast probably a year ago when I had asked him about it for the last WrestleMania, which was in Dallas. And Roman said to me, and I was surprised he was so honest about it. And he said, well, wouldn't it make more sense to do it in Los Angeles when WrestleMania is there? I was like, yeah, it does make sense considering.
That's what I was told, because there had been talk of the two WrestleManias last year and next year were always going to be Roman and Roman with Brock and Roman with Dwayne. But the idea was that, which would be the first one. And someone, very close to the top basically said, look, Dwayne wants to do, Los Angeles.
Right.
It meant that Brock was going to be the main event this year.
Right.
This past year.
Yep. I know a lot of fans listening to this has nothing to do with Vince, but I know a lot of fans want to know what's going on with Sasha Banks and Naomi.
It's kind of up in the air. I mean, they're gone. The last I heard was that there would be attempts to be made to reconcile, especially with Vince gone. So yeah, it's up in the air. It's up in the air. I don't think there's anything definite just yet.
And then Friday, on the day that the announcement came out about Vince, there were the stories that Brock had left SmackDown that day. Then he came back for the show. Do we expect Brock to not stick around because Vince isn't there anymore?
I think they made a deal with Brock that's really, really good, and I think Brock will be around. I don't know what happened, but it was the moment the tweet came. So it's like 1 o'clock, 1:05 p.m., right, when Vince makes the tweet on Friday, and Brock walks out, and then he showed back up at 8:30, and they were in communication with him, and the way it was told to me was they don't want it to look to the outside world. It was very imperative that it doesn't look to the outside world that Vince quit and now our company's in chaos with our most famous wrestler walking out and missing this big pay-per-view as well. So it was one of those things where, was Brock such a genius to figure out that at that moment, they couldn't lose him, and him walking out was this brilliant move? Or was he just frustrated about something and just cooled off? As far as what happened in that 7.5 hours, they were in communication with him and they made him happy. But, exactly what they did, I couldn't tell you.
Yeah. So Saturday is SummerSlam, as I said, second biggest pay-per-view of the year for the WWE. You think Vince is in Connecticut, glued to Peacock, watching every second of it, or do you think he has to sort of, like, his personality? I could see him just being obsessed with watching it, and then I could see him not being able to watch it because it might be too painful. What do you think Vince is on Saturday night?
Yeah, I don't know any more than you would know, and I would have those. My gut was that he's going to be watching it, Yeah, and probably going crazy at things he doesn't like.
Right. And give me, I asked you, we touched on this before, but just as a way to close it out, for the wrestling fan listening to this who watches Raw, who watches SmackDown, when do you think they would start to see maybe some changes, the impact of Triple H, maybe not necessarily changes, but the Triple H influence on the shows? A couple of weeks, right after SummerSlam?
My gut is Monday after SummerSlam. This coming Monday, we might see some stuff. If it's maybe some debuts or just new angles being shot and things like that. Yeah. I think this coming Monday.
I mean, if there's any benefit here for the WWE, I think they do get a nice ratings bump for the next little while here, because I think people are going to be more than interested to see what's going on with the product. Yeah.
I think we got a couple of weeks of, eventually it will go back to where it should be. But I do expect, the ratings Friday and Monday were both, way up from usual.
Right. And you touched on this earlier, but I just want to get into it just a little more specifically, and then I'll let you go, because this is, ties into media a lot here. They have deals, like you said, with NBC, which is Peacock, and with Fox for SmackDown. Were they a player in it? You said that they were fine with what was going on, but in terms of like putting Triple H in charge of creative, Stephanie, do they get a say in that? How involved are NBC and Fox?
I couldn't tell you exactly. I mean, obviously they're paying so much for this stuff that they certainly have to be informed.
Right.
How much influence they have, I couldn't tell you, but I think that from their perspective, since those are the people that they've dealt with, those would probably be the people they would be most comfortable with in that spot anyway.
Right.
But, as far as how much influence, I don't know. I mean, it is, like one of the things we talked about, it is really the thing I think the most fascinating, or one of the most fascinating parts of the story is, you go back just a couple of months and Stephanie was out of the company.
Right.
And there was a non-flattering story about her that they put out. And then that was in Business Insider. And then,
who put out?
Somebody in the company.
Oh, okay.
Basically, she had taken a leave of absence.
Right,
okay?
right.
She had taken a leave of absence. And then they put out a story that Vince actually made the decision to let her go, and they did hire somebody for her position immediately.
Wow! I never saw that story.
Yeah, that they hired someone, and I mean, I had actually heard from other reporters that they were, they were basically saying she wasn't that great at her job, and that Business Insider story was pretty much saying that, and that she was really replaced, and she was not leaving on her own. I am relatively sure she left on her own. Everything that I found out was, she'd been talking about it for months, and there were a bunch of reasons, most of which never came out, and then I'm not even familiar with, or that I don't know, but that were hinted to me. But and Paul, lost a lot of power, when they decided to make the changes in NXT, and now, they're the ones running the thing. I mean, it's just it's been an unbelievable roller coaster of the last few months.
Absolutely. And I would imagine too, I think this even I think I saw something, even though Vince is gone now, retired, I would imagine there's going to be people talking and leaking, and we're going to hear. Now, who knows what comes out, what's true, bitter. Maybe there's someone who was bitter about the way they were used. I'm sure some of the stuff obviously will be true, but I wonder how much him retiring stops the leaks and bad stories, or if we're going to keep getting dribs and drabs here.
I mean, as far as like people I think that there's going to be a lot of people who were afraid of saying things bad about Vince that may not be so afraid.
Right.
But I don't, it's funny because even when some of this stuff with Vince came out, a lot of people still wouldn't say bad. And, again, there's a thing, wrestlers, even the ones who are frustrated by their creative position and things like that, they made a lot of money with Vince, and more money than they ever expected they would ever make in their lives. Yep. And I think that there's, wrestlers themselves, for the most part, were not negative to Vince, even though there were all kinds of things that were questionable during that period and everything. But wrestlers, you don't bite the hand that feeds you, in a lot of cases. Some will, but I think there'll be some, but I don't think it'll be an overwhelming amount.
Yeah. I hate to say this because I'm one of I hate when people are pushed out of jobs or diminished because of age, but it does seem like in pro wrestling where you've got to do storylines that appeal to younger people. I think it's just difficult having even if, listen, he's the greatest wrestling mind of all time. There's, everything in wrestling revolved around Vince, but he is 77. At some point, you need, I think, younger blood in terms of I know they have writers, but every decision stopped with Vince. So just from that standpoint, I think it'll be interesting in terms of the on-air product to see.
Absolutely. Does it get, because one of the things is there was always people, the age is something, but there's always the thing of like, okay, this company, especially in the last several years, because of all of the television deals, they're idiot proof. Okay. And I'm not saying Vince is an idiot at all. I'm just saying that they are idiot proof. They cannot lose money, and they could fall in popularity to a degree, but they'd have to, if they put out an absolutely horrendous product, they would lose popularity, and in the long run, they would go down. And Paul will not, Triple H will not put out a horrendous product. Whatever he does, I've seen the products he's done before. Will it be as good as Vince to draw from the general public? Time will tell. I think it might be better, but there's no way of knowing. But Vince was in a position where no matter what he did, the company was going to be very, very successful financially, and but there were still people who thought that like only Vince could do this, right?
Right.
I don't know that that's the case. I mean, I thought the Vince of the 80s was. The Vince of the 80s was, really, really sharp and built that company and everything like that. I think that, in the last, whatever years, I think that there could have been other people put in that position and been, more successful in that position. But, we'll never know. And now I guess we'll find out if it has to be Vince or not. And I think it doesn't have to be Vince.
Right. This is the very last question, I promise, will this company be put up for sale and get sold anytime in the future?
I believe so. Yeah. I think that's an inevitability. When and to who, we can all look at the big media conglomerates, but the stock market thinks so, because that's why the stock has gone up, is because they think with Vince out that the sale will become quicker. But even with Vince there, I had expected, since 2016, people in the company had, I think from 2016 on, had said like, they're making moves to get ready for a sale. That's 6 years ago. I think when they saw, when UFC got $4 billion, that it sort of opened their eyes that, oh my God, it's more money than we ever dreamed. And our company's similar to UFC. And now, obviously, if they were sold, it would be for far, far, far more than $4 billion. So I think that will happen. And then, at that point, as we've seen with UFC and with every company, it's like, all kinds of front office changes end up getting made then, and then they'll put their own people in charge, and who knows?
Right. I'm not ready for that yet. This was enough what happened this week. I appreciate you coming on and giving us all some insight and some information. Obviously, huge story. So no one better to talk to about it than you. So thank you for coming on. I appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Very interesting conversation. Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Take care. All right. Joining me now, back after a week off, for our weekly Train of Thought segment from WFAN in New York, SNY TV in New York, my buddy Sal Licata. Sal, are you refreshed?
No, I am not. I learned that, and it was nice to be away, but I learned that a vacation with a 15-month-old is not a vacation, in fact.
So you're not refreshed. I thought you would be refreshed and in a good mood.
It was nice. No, I'm in a good mood. It was nice to be off. Don't get me wrong, but it flies by, and it just, it goes too fast. And like I said, it was nice to be able to spend time with my daughter and my wife and be home. But it's not like I was sitting by poolside or the beach the entire time for 10 days with my feet up, which is something I guess I need to do come February.
What was your social media consumption during these 10 days?
Great question. That was actually the best part of my vacation. It started, you know how it is, like you try to wean yourself off of it. So the first day I was checking a little bit, and then I was like, all right, let me try to check out. And by day 2, day 3, I was out. I had it off my phone. I did not check tweets. I did not check in. I barely checked. I checked some sports scores or whatever the last week before the All-Star break, or the last series before the All-Star break. But other than that, I was off of it for a good 8 days or so. So that was a nice cleanse. And then, of course, I come back to all the, you idiot, the Braves are going to beat the Mets, you suck, blah, blah, blah. And I realized that social media is not, in fact, healthy.
Welcome back. I mean,
exactly. Nothing says welcome back from vacation like you suck, you idiot.
I mean, and you didn't tweet for 10 days and people bash. Like, I could see if you tweeted stuff and then people bash you, but you didn't even tweet people are bashing you.
I came back with one tweet, and then immediately after I sent that tweet, it was like, I realized I shouldn't have sent it, and I should just delete Twitter forever. But anyway.
Well, let's start with good news that happened while you were on your vacation. Someone we are huge fans of, Christopher Mad Dog Russo, finally got into the Radio Hall of Fame. So we got to give a shout out and props to the doggy, who I have listened to this week, and his entire shows have been about, him being a legend in radio. So it's been amusing.
And I heard him give you a shout out as his fifth child or whatever it was, which was freaking amazing. I loved it. You go ahead.
No, he likes that I promote the First Take videos with him and Stephen A. But you go.
Yeah. You and him have gotten closer than him and I once babysat for his kids. He's my idol, for God's sake. I worked with him on the show. I remember him telling me that he was going to leave before he actually left the Mike and the Mad Dog show. You and him are now best buddies.
Did you text him to congratulate him?
I did not. I didn't want to be. Yeah, I mean, look, I mentioned it maybe on the air. I think it's ridiculous that he didn't get in. He knows my opinion, and at least you know it. He's the best, I think, ever to do it. So I love that Susan got in as well. But how could Mike get in without Mad Dog? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me how the whole thing works.
Listen, just because it's a radio, all Hall of Fames everywhere are awful, and no one should take them seriously. But it's nice that he got in. He deserves the honor. He should have been in years ago.
You're right. It should have. And I just assumed that he would have been in already. Same with Susan. But if he is happy and proud about it, I guess he is. You're right. I probably should text him and just let him know that.
Yeah, send him a text. I should have mentioned this when you first came on. We've gotten a lot of reviews on Apple, but this is a very long podcast because we had 2 guests and now this segment. So we'll read them next week. So if anyone is listening, leave a 5-star review on Apple, write a review. I'll read it next week. We have a lot we'll read next week. Couple of other topics. And I want to shout out, I'm very happy Susan Waldman also got in the Radio Hall of Fame. Yankee analyst on radio and a reporter for like 100 years for the Yankees, and used to do the Knicks, and well-deserved for Susan Waldman as well. So definitely have to mention that. Have you watched any of the Jeter doc?
Yes, and I've loved it. I was just talking to somebody out in the SNY newsroom about it. They were saying that, Met fans aren't watching it. I think they're doing themselves a disservice. If you're a baseball fan at all, I know you as a Yankee fan and a Jeter lover are going to love it more than, if you're not a Yankee fan. But I lived through those years. I hated those Yankee teams. I despised Derek Jeter and Joe Torre and everybody. I'm loving the first 2 episodes that I've seen so far.
It's very big of you. Shows you.
It's you're learning something. You're getting insight to Derek Jeter. You're reliving, even though it wasn't great memories for me, you're still reliving great history with the dynasty and getting insight to Derek Jeter himself. They did it right. They have Jeter. They have other Yankees on there and former players and good people that you're hearing from. So I've loved the first 2. I can't wait for episode 3 and 4 on Thursday.
I wouldn't watch a David Ortiz 7-part docuseries on ESPN. You're a bigger man than me.
No, well, I don't know if I would either. But this is Derek Jeter. This is not. It's not just some Yankee or some Red Sox or some Met. It's Derek Jeter. How could you not be interested? You learn from that. I mean, you learn from the way that he was raised, the way that he came up to be a professional. I mean, come on, you can learn a ton from that.
I will say, and obviously I'm not objective on this, as you pointed out, but I do think, put aside the Jeter, the Yankees, it's a well-done docuseries. I feel like this is a Jeter like we've never heard him before. So from that standpoint, I think people should check it out if they don't just completely detest Derek Jeter.
I can't wait to get to the gift baskets part. That's what I want to know about.
That part is not drama. That's not great. The gift basket. I mean, I don't know. Like, first of all, he's addressed it before, but no one knew it because it was on a Dan Patrick old interview show that was on DirecTV, so nobody really saw it. I remember I did it I don't remember if it was Train of Thoughts or Hot Clicks, but he had addressed it before. And, his reaction is what you expect. He's like, this is ridiculous, basically. That's not really like an in-depth part of it, but they get into it. Let me keep it rolling here. The biggest story of the week on social media is the fact that Klondike is no longer producing the Choco Taco ice cream treat. Where do you stand? Were you a big fan of it? It seems to me like everyone on Twitter wants to say they're a fan of it, but no one must have been ordering it or getting it from the ice cream man or buying it in the store.
Yeah, it was never a go-to of mine. I've had it. I'm familiar with it. It was never a go-to. I would say maybe I've had 2 in my life, but I've definitely heard of it. And, it's always one of those choices up on the ice cream truck, but it was not my go-to.
The ice cream truck comes right now in front of where you are. You go out there. What do you order?
WWF ice cream bars.
They don't have them anymore.
That's what I want. That was my go-to from like 1989 or 1990.
Listen, I agree. It's the best ice cream bar ever created, but they don't make them anymore. So if the ice cream truck came today, what are you ordering?
Not Mr. Softy. We're talking regular ice cream truck?
No, regular ice cream truck that we have here in Long Island, not the Mr. Softy.
I'd say probably a strawberry shortcake or a creamsicle. I'm not, and maybe I'd have to see it to refresh my memory, but I never got nuts with that. I always went with standard. I know what I'm getting. Go for the home run.
Yeah. You'll see when your daughter gets a little older, because like my nieces, they get anything that's got like a lot of colors and looks disgusting.
Right. The gum balls in the middle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that was a good one, too. Remember the baseball glove? I used to get that a lot. The red baseball glove with the white ball, gum ball.
I didn't love that, but I do. I didn't love it, but I remember it. I remember it well. But I wasn't a big fan of that. I wanted to get into this topic. Have you seen these stories that Bruce Springsteen's going on tour? His tickets are like $5,000 each, and people are flipping out. And apparently Adele is on tour, and there are tickets going for $40,000 to see Adele. Now, I don't think you're a big Bruce guy. Yeah, it's insane.
So Bruce is the guy who does that Christmas song, right?
Right, exactly. You and I are on the same wavelength with Bruce, where we don't. But so here's my question to you: what is the most you would pay for a ticket to a concert? Lower level, not in the front row, not in the upper deck, but like, maybe like a decent floor seat for whatever art. I know you're a huge Kanye West guy. Like, what is the most you would pay to see Kanye West floor seats, Madison Square Garden?
Probably $500. I don't think I'm going more than that. And I know it would cost obviously way more. Even Billy Joel, like I love him. I don't think I would pay more than $500 for a concert, because I don't really care necessarily where I sit. I like to have decent seats, but I don't even think I've ever sat on the floor. Usually I like sitting on the side as close to the stage as I can. That first level up, not the floor, on the side as close as I can. But, even Eminem, who I love, and maybe $750 max, but I think that's egregious. That's a ridiculous amount to see a concert.
I can't wait to ask your wife about this next time I see her. Sal would spend $750 for an Eminem concert. I want to get her reaction.
That's like my max. $500 would probably be the cutoff. I mean, I think what's the average? $250, $300 nowadays?
Let me go. Who would you rather see in concert, Eminem or Kanye West?
Great question. I've seen both multiple times. If right now you're telling me that they're both on
tomorrow night, Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, I have not seen Eminem in a while. And, Kanye's gone off the rails a little bit, these concerts where he does the political stuff. And I've seen him a lot. I would probably go Eminem right now for nostalgia purposes. I'd love to reminisce.
All right, so Eminem, Madison Square Garden tomorrow. Most you'd pay for a ticket for a decent seat.
Am I going by myself?
You go, let's say you go by yourself. You're going with me. You're going with me.
Right, but you're paying your own ticket. I'm not taking my wife.
Right, okay. So one ticket.
I might go more than $750 if I had to. If it was like Eminem can play all the hits, yeah. Just you can't tell my wife about it. I mean, if I had to go one show, that was it. This is the be all end all. Last time I'll ever see him plays all the hits. I'd probably go over $750. But that's nuts. That's insane.
Yeah, you're talking about yourself.
Well, what would your max be for Billy Joel or whoever it is that you want to see?
$300.
Paul McCartney.
But I have a thing with concerts. I can't sit in a bad seat. I'm the opposite of you. I can't sit. I'm not sitting in the upper deck. I'd rather not go. Right. So when I do go to
the floor,
no, I don't need to be on the floor. I'm like you. The sides are fine. I'm totally lower level on the side is fine. But if you tell me, Billy Joel's at the Garden tomorrow, $50 for the upper deck, I'm not going. Right. There's just no way. I can't. I need to be low. either floor seats are way too expensive. Those are but that first level, like it's usually like the 100s, for instance, like at the Garden. Like, you know, would I pay $300 for Billy Joel? Probably not, because I've seen him so many times. If it was someone, you know, I was dying to see, I think $300 would be my max.
Yeah.
You have to understand too, when you go to a concert, like you're saying $750, I'm saying $300. That's just the beginning. It's the cost to get there. You know, God forbid you want a drink. You know, it's
right. You're talking about $1,500 just to go see a concert. No, I know realistically, it'd have to be a special concert for me to go over $500. I think Eminem, one night only or whatever, that may qualify for me. But even that's just, you know, over $500 is ridiculous.
But you said $750.
Well, you're asking me like, I mean, what's another $250? You're gonna spend $500. What's another $250?
Love it.
At least live through it. Yeah.
Love it. Last thing, did you watch any new shows, anything over vacation, anything to recommend to the people? I've told people I watched The Bear on Hulu. I recommend it, and The Bear is easy because it's only 8 episodes and it's a half hour each, so you can get. But it's intense. It's not a show you want to watch like when you're laying in bed right before you're about to fall asleep.
The Bear,
and then,
never heard of it.
Yeah, it's on Hulu. It's good. It's about a guy who takes over a restaurant after his brother dies. If you're into food and restaurants, it's cool. And I joined the rest of the world and I binged Succession a couple of weeks ago. It took me like 6 days to watch the 3 seasons. So
what'd you think?
I love it. Great show.
Yeah. I would Better Call Saul I told you about is that's the show right now for me. The one show that my wife and I think it's a couple of years old by now, that one that was on, I think it's FX, which we now watch it on Hulu, the one about Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky.
Oh, Impeachment.
It's
not that old. It came out within the last year.
Yeah, we're 5 episodes in, and it's only because we haven't had enough time because I've been back to work, but I cannot get enough of that. I love that.
How many episodes is it?
I think it's 10. I don't know. Maybe it's 8. It's either 8 or 10. But I want to say 10 because I feel like we were halfway through. But we're 5 through, and I love it. I think the acting is really good. Now, who knows how true it is? I think it's coming from Monica Lewinsky's standpoint, which I do believe that there would be a lot of truth to it, but very disturbing stuff.
Yeah. I meant to watch that when it was on. Never got it. I think it was on during football season, and then, you know, nothing gets watched. But maybe I'll put that on the list.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it's good to have you back. We'll read reviews next week. Yeah, everyone leave a 5-star review, write something, and we'll read them next week. And be well.
All right, we'll talk to you later.
Get refreshed.
I need another vacay.
I know. Bye, Sal. All right, my thanks to John Ourand, Dave Meltzer, Sal Licata. Big show. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please subscribe to the SI Media Podcast. Leave a review on Apple. We will read it next week in the Train of Thought segment. And check out past episodes in the archives. We've had a great run of guests, so give those a look if you have not listened to each of the episodes in the past weeks. All right. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next week right here on the SI Media Podcast. Stay safe and take care.